All right, we've got me up on stage. A little bit of 80s retro music to kick us off at the beginning there. I imagine that's been done by Jen. All right, let's see some emojis from the audience if you can hear me loud and clear, please. Thanks. Can we get the ASM account back on mute if we don't have more music coming? Fantastic. Looking down at this audience, a pretty good audience to start already here. So as this space is recorded, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't kick things off right now. First of all, welcome everyone to the ASM 2.0 Ask Us Anything session. I'm Scott, also known as Mometa, and I'll be guiding you through this today as we endeavour to answer any questions you have. Obviously, a couple of weeks ago, we had some great announcements from Shara and Aaron, and we're going to dig a little bit deeper into those today. So we definitely want questions from the audience. So at a later stage, I'm going to open up the floor for everybody. But I also have the great pleasure to be joined by Aaron McDonald, also known as Captain. How are you today, Aaron?
Better if I take myself off mute. I'm good. Yeah, awesome. Stoked to be here. Happy birthday, Fluffs.
Yeah, big shout out to the Fluffs today. It's a great day
for the Fluff community. Lots of cool things coming for Fluff holders too. So big for ASM, big for Fluff, big for Futureverse. Awesome. And big for the Ripple, I guess Web3 community in general with the Ripple settlement. Like lots of good things this morning in a world that's got lots of shitty things going on.
Yeah, I did get quite a few messages from the XRPL community saying, is the space still on? Because there's so many spaces running now with excited people looking to the future of what this really means for us all. Aaron, just while I have you, before we kick this off, what does this mean for us?
The XRP settlement?
Yeah.
I think it just puts to bed another chapter in the saga and provides more confidence that the grounds for the legal actions that were undertaken are weak at best and probably shouldn't be pursued, again. So it's a further resetting, I guess, of the scene, in the broader crypto ecosystem in relations between regulators and the companies that are building in this space. And I think provides a little bit more confidence and surety for those out there that things might take a different path going forward that's a little bit more positive and constructive.
Yeah, just another testament to the endurance of the XRP community. They are battle hardened. They've been through the lot. But I'm also going to invite one more person to say good morning to us, and that is the person with the coolest sounding job title in the company, the head of intelligence. Lenny, how are you today?
Hey, good morning. I'm good. Happy to be here, and happy birthday, Fluff.
Awesome. We're happy to have you here, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into your journey with ASM a bit later on. But look, it's been a couple of weeks since we did that first announcement where we told the new changes that were coming up in the new direction. So the things we really need to discuss today is the ASM Fungible Intelligence Protocol, the ASM Launchpad Protocol, ASM Void Protocol, and dig into the Murmur Matrix a little bit further too. So I think, Lenny, if we can start off with you, if that's okay, can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself quickly? As the head of intelligence with that cool title, what does a day in the life of head of intelligence for Futureverse look like?
Yeah, so I started with Futureverse, with ASM a whole 3 years ago now. But now I've kind of stepped up to lead the ASM AI protocol, working with all of our teams at Futureverse. So like our AI research teams, our prototyping teams, platform, experiences, tech, everyone, just to bring all of our necessary components together respectively to evolve ASM and deliver continuously on this vision.
And Lenny is like underplaying her hand here a little bit. Not only is Lenny a hardcore gamer that knows literally everything about games, Lenny's a scientist. So if you put those two things together, you get like quite a good person to lead this part of the Futureverse ecosystem and protocol stack.
Yeah, she's been in the trenches from the beginning. That's why it's great to have her here for some of these questions. I've just got to mention, with that title, if I was the head of intelligence, I would ring up every primary school teacher and I'd tell them my title. And I'd say, you were wrong. look at me now. You were wrong. But
you could still do that, though, can't you, Scott?
Engagement and content. They always knew I was engaging, and they knew I had no shortage of content. Genius and disruptive. I'm all those things. Now, Lenny, we're gonna have to get into some of these questions because obviously this means a lot to a lot of people. So, first of all, we've got a lot of questions around the Genesis brains, like how do the developers use them? How will they use the launchpad? And how do these genomes come into play? Can you give us a bit of background there?
Yeah, so I guess to put it simply, the ASM Launchpad allows us to manage developers that are wanting to use our patented technologies. And for those developers building on-chain, on any chain other than the root network, they'll need a Genesis brain to gain access to our tech, but we're also encouraging these builders to, acquire brains with traits that they'll need when building their apps, games, or business solutions, and working with them as well to help design for their use cases. Outside of the Launchpad protocol, there's also, of course, like a range of other utilities for brains and genomes that we're going to continue to expand and demonstrate.
Yeah, and I think like the really cool thing about this is that it's like an on-chain way to show that a project is linked to the protocol. And if you think about in ASM from the beginning, it's always been about two things. One is the ideas of ASM, which are the things that are kind of enshrined in those patents, and then there's the technologies. And so the brains are kind of sitting now across both of those. They're helping developers access the ideas so that the ideas of ASM can live everywhere, and we don't have to build everything ourselves. And also they continue to provide the function they had from day one, which is being able to be useful in games and applications and experiences. And developers can continue to build on those brains. And in fact, with the new path forward, it makes it simpler for them to do that. And make a road that's bigger for those brains to kind of play in. And so we're trying to accomplish like both things there, put like direct links to the brain asset themselves as part of this protocol, but also expand the utility of Gen 1 brains by making it kind of easier to develop on that standard.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So the brains will be used for off the root network, and the genomes can be specially suited to that developer and their needs. So there's a lot.
Well, brains are kind of, to be clear, like brains have always been network agnostic because, in a sense, you could build a game on any network as long as you could sign a transaction to grab the genome from ETH. In the same way that FuturePass can like access the data about NFTs across multiple networks. So the brains themselves have been, but the protocols that we've been building have been network specific. You can't build on every network that exists out there. And there are builders that want to build with these ideas on a whole bunch of networks that are not in our roadmaps. And so how do we bring value back to the protocol for everyone who's using these ideas, but building their own things on other chains and other types of applications that maybe don't even need brains themselves, but contain the concepts that are enshrined within brains. And so that's the whole point here, is to give the opportunity for that system of creativity to proliferate and for not be dependent on us building everything, but also make sure those people are like linked to the protocol through that hard asset and through their contributions to the Void protocol.
That's a lot of information you're dropping on us there, which is great. And obviously, if you've answered any of these preloaded questions through these answers as we go, jump in, let me know. But Aaron, I've got another one for you. The ASM non-fungible intelligence protocol has been designed with scalability, interoperability, composability. This now means that everything in the open metaverse can be made intelligent. Can you tell us how you think developers will use the ASM tech in their apps, their businesses? Like, what are the problems these developers are looking to solve, and how can we help them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the core things, like we keep reinforcing, is ownability and interoperability. And so anywhere where you want to make an agent something that can follow a user, or an account or an asset is a really interesting use case. So that could be an intelligent character, for example, is the go-to one that people often go to. And so now I have this thing, and my intelligence can be linked to it, and my my actions as I kind of interact with a game or experience can be derived from the genome. That kind of base capability continues to exist. What we've kind of discovered over the last few years, and I think this is kind of important to have context, is we're striving to make the protocol work, the ecosystem work, the ideas work. And as technology changes and the landscape changes, you have to adapt to the ways that you do that. Otherwise, you get left behind. And so, like, clinging to ideas that might have happened 4 or 5 years ago when this first thing started would get us nowhere, because the world has moved since then. And part of that movement is we discovered, cool new technology as a society, and the outcome of that is that we can do different things in AI than we used to be able to do. And so the ASM protocols have to adapt to deal with that. And the output of all of that thinking and kind of knowledge gathering and research is the Murmur matrix. And that's really where this kind of ASM pivot, I guess, lies, is that we started with the notion that everything was around training data for an agent and putting the outputs of that training into the agent in a way that is transmutable or shareable or ownable. And that still is a use case, and it's still something that operates within our ecosystem. That's what happens in games like TNL. The agent data lives with the brain, and the actual kind of outputs of training is stored there. But actually what's really, really important now in this new world of generative AI and LLMs is how the data of a thing interacts with these models. And so ASM has evolved its protocol to deal with that. And so now you have the genome, which has got more features in it. It does not just skills, it does emotions. It contains this Murmur matrix card, which can collect data that can be now injected into these different kinds of generative scenarios. And so when you put those two things together, you come up with a totally different model for how brains should work, because now the memories and the context of that brain are relative to the thing itself, to the 3D avatar or the space of the object or whatever. And so it has to move along with those things in a different way than what we first intended. So ASM's become much, much more about the data and much, much less about training outputs, if that makes sense.
It does, and it very much leans into our next question as well. I'm not sure whether to start it with Lenny or yourself, but if I frame it slightly, if we imagine a world where everything is intelligent, gaming environments to life like never before, in such a world, could AI dramatically alter elements and gravity and physics of that environment? Excuse me. And if so, will avatars and objects within this world need to understand these changes? So are they adapting and learning to navigate these AI intelligent worlds? Is that what's happening here with the Murmur
matrix? Right. So you're taking data from the experience. And the simplest explanation we keep coming back to, and I think kind of frames this nicely, is everything can be intelligent, even a rock. And so a rock can have a genome matrix in it, which gives it both attributes. It's a heavy rock, for example, and it gives it emotions. So it's a sad rock. And those things can then come into contact with something like a generative model. And so if that rock then is placed in a lake...
We've got you rugging a little bit there, okay. Aaron, are you able to step closer to your...
Sorry, where did you lose me? Hello?
I can hear you clearly.
Yeah. It might just be you, Scott.
Nova, can I get a mic check from you, please?
Oh, yeah, it's Scott.
Scott, you're rugged. I'll keep talking.
You're both coming through as robots on my end. Can I just hear from the audience? Can I get a thumbs up if you can hear Aaron and Lenny clearly? Or a thumbs down if you can't.
Okay, we got thumbs up. I'm going to keep talking. So,
Or I may be the one rugging.
So the idea is that, you know,
Aaron, can I get a mic check from you?
Yeah, I'm talking, Scott. Can someone ping Scott in Slack and tell him I'm going to keep talking?
I'm rugging. Hold on.
So the idea is that that rock now is able to, I guess,
all right, check 1, 2.
Leach data from the toxic environment. And so now those two things are in contact with each other through this kind of spatial awareness that the MEMA matrix gives. They can like leach data into each other, and now my rock can become toxic. Okay, so that's data that lives in the MEMA matrix card. I've come in contact with a toxic environment. Now I'm toxic. What happens next? Well, imagine you're in that environment and you take that rock from one place to another. In that other place, the generative model can spin up a toxic looking rock as if it was toxic in that environment, because it has that data now. And so that's really what the MEMA matrix is about, is making the data available to these higher order intelligence models so that they can generate content off the back of that data that is relative to that experience, but relative to the asset and its history. And that's why we say everything can be intelligence now, because in your real world, in the real world that we exist in today, everything we come in contact with gives us something. It gives us some data. You know, I'm holding my iPhone now. That's giving me data that I had that thing in my hand. It looked like this thing. It felt this weight. It, you know, it's got this image on the front of it, and so all of that data is now part of me, and that's really what the MEMA matrix is trying to do.
I had to step away for a little while there, guys. Sorry if I spoke over the top of everybody. Can we hear me loud and clear now?
Yep.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. Now, I did miss part of the story about the thinking rock, Aaron, but I did jump in at the end there and heard you wrap up the MEMA matrix. So what I'd like to do now is...
and so on the use cases, like just to re-answer that question, it's really like your imagination can run wild with how can data interact with generative models. And that can be used in, you know, in gaming contexts. There's a whole bunch of stuff that Marco's been working on that can be used in the corporate context. So how does the idea of MEMA matrix data work in a browser scenario, so that when I'm going to visit a brand, I can impart data into that experience in the way that brands, models, and generative AI and LLMs that are powering that experience can give me more personal context. I think the simplest way to think about a MEMA matrix card is like a cookie for intelligence. That's really what it is.
If I can build on that, actually, I think the brand layer is really interesting. I feel like I talk a lot about the possibilities with gaming, but
yeah.
So I guess one of the possibilities is creating those like really curated brand experiences for your customers. So, you know, I wear a lot of black spandex and I live in a usually warm environment. So when I enter like an e-commerce space, whether it's in Roblox, anywhere in the metaverse, maybe the store's digital assistant would be able to like interact and converse with me and gather my preferences or desires, observe details about me and my like current emotional state. So maybe my facial expressions, the way that I'm speaking, then they'd work harmoniously with other specialized AI agents to transform the storefront, show me, you know, the activewear clothing collections that speak to my preferences, generate immersive video backgrounds, lighting effects, music with Jen that match my mood that I've expressed to them by transmitting that kind of data, and really like enhance my commerce experience.
Yeah, and we're already working with brands on big brands on proof of concepts that can embed this kind of experience into their customer journey. So this is you know, the possibilities I think are a lot bigger than what people have imagined for the gaming space. Although it is kind of, you know, designed from the idea of that the internet will become more immersive over time. It can work inside of non-immersive contexts as well.
Now that gives us a good understanding of where we're going and what we can be excited about. But we've got some questions that we asked to be submitted, so we're going to need to go and look at the past a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Actually,
Lots
Lenny,
of good questions, by the way. Thanks everyone for submitting them. Hopefully we can get to a lot of them, or at least the core ideas. And if we can't, then we'll come back on any specific ones that we missed today.
100%, and start getting your requests in to come and join me on stage as well, because I love the live questions. Great to be a little bit granular at the beginning regarding ASM, but if you want to get philosophical about AI and the future of it, the people on stage are the ones to ask. So all questions are welcome. But Lenny, just taking it back to splicing and cloning. Now, you've been with ASM since the beginning. What was the original concept behind splicing for scalability, and where is it now?
Okay, yeah. So an early ASM concept was the ability to essentially like breed or clone Genesis brains, inheriting attributes of the parents and their memory trees in the newly created brains, so that you don't have to train them from scratch. Oh, am I still here? Cool.
Yeah,
this was part of the original implementation where memory trees were tied to like a specific experience or environment. And while this is a great idea, I feel like we've really shifted gears to focus on the memory matrix and the interoperability and persistence of memories across applications.
Yeah, so it's you can kind of get the same outcome, but it's going a different way. It's being delivered a different way. And rather than having environmental specific training outputs, which is what we talked about earlier, we can have environment or application specific murmurs that are created that essentially naturally create that splicing effect without having to do anything, because now all of those things are available to the application layer and to the generative model on the other side of that application. And so they can take the weighting of those things into account in terms of how they deliver that outcome on their side. So it still exists, it just exists on a different form.
Okay, and I'm kind of digging into that a little bit
now. Cloning
this
itself is like probably quite redundant now, because what we talked about earlier, that context and memory is much more closely linked to form. So my rock is going to experience the world as a rock. And if you suddenly shove it, and you can still do this, like we're not saying don't, but it's just not a core loop of the protocol anymore. If I suddenly shove a rock inside of an athlete, then it's lost all its like sense of the world. And so those could be fun, wacky experiments that people could do. But we think for the mainstream use cases, the context of the character, asset, environment, music track, browser session, or whatever will be the thing that is kind of persistently linked to that unit of intelligence, that brain. And that's why in the new protocol, brains are embedded in anything that's minted, as opposed to being discrete.
I feel like in the future we're going to have a rock that lives at the bottom of your neighbor's garden in a shed somewhere, with the analogies we're going for here. Now, regarding this new utility you're talking about at the moment, Aaron, does this include the Void Protocol 2.0, and how does that come into play with the brains?
Yeah, so Void's the answer to the question, which is, I think, has been plaguing people, which is how do we leverage the innovations that we've created and patented? And also to a challenge that we talked about earlier, which is how do you make sure that ASM's everywhere without having to build it everywhere? And so in order to do that, we created a system which I think is like really good for the community and also really good for developers. It means that developers can build their thing. They can do that anywhere, and they can do that any way they want. And if they use those ideas, they contribute back to the protocol. And the Void is kind of like ASM's Vortex in a way. It gives those communities ability to contribute value back to the ASM community and use it as a launch pad. Like what we hope now is that with all the projects coming on board, they're going to find out about ASM. Our community is going to find out about them, and there's going to be cross-pollination. More people are going to do more cool things with the technology, and we can become like a central place for projects to come in that are in this AI domain, to not only come and discover new users, but also to gain the protection of those patents, and get the freedom to operate in their domain and do their thing, without having to worry about trolls coming along and fucking them. So it's a really good two-way model and a new kind of way to, I think, look at how IP can be owned and governed in a decentralized way. The intention is, for the beginning, I know there's been a few questions about this, so I'll address them now. Like, in terms of how we started this, we've been working directly with projects, some of the leaders in the space, to figure out how that model can work and provide mutual value. We haven't just gone and said, hey, you must do this, and otherwise you're going to beat you up. It's been a very collaborative process, and trying to establish how those mutual value trains work for both communities. And once we get a few of those out and under our belt, then we can start to introduce governance tools, which essentially will allow projects to make proposals to the Void that the ASM community can vote on and accept their proposal for how they want to contribute to the Void, and then grant them the access to the Void protocol and license. So that's something that governance will take over time, and that once we establish and bootstrap this with some baselines that people can people can build off and we can get some ideas about how to template proposals and stuff like that in the governance side of things. So that's a really exciting thing, I think, too, for the protocol, and something that wasn't really specifically outlined in the last paper, that we're really giving some good meaning now to the governance role of ASTO in the economy. And maybe, Lenny, you want to address the other question that came alongside that in terms of the fees for the non-fungible intelligence palette.
Oh, yeah. So I think the question was around how or what's going to determine the initial pricing. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you recall genome mining in the Lunaris machine, that was a pretty big community effort where a price in ASTO energy was determined for genomes and Gen 2 brains. So that initial price will definitely be considering that, the community activity within the protocol, as well as kind of scaling for its new utilities.
Yeah, and again, over time, that price setting can be a governance function. So people in the community can vote on what it costs to make a brain through the new NFI palette, in the same way they've contributed to reaching a cost via the current ASTO energy mechanism.
Now, this question's been asked a lot, so I just want to dig a little deeper on it, just to make sure we're all clear. So with ASTO energy that people currently hold, what's going to be happening with that, and what are the plans for the Cortex?
Do you want to go, Lenny?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, our plan is to support and allow existing ASTO energy to work with the Void reward system. I won't go too much into it as we're still in development, but we'll definitely release more on that later. And for the Cortex, that'll still be alive and hopefully get a brand new face in the future.
Yeah, I will add to that to say, one of the cool things about the design of this system is that energy is a non-tokenized balance, which is perfect for what we're trying to do with Void. Because if you think about what the Void's trying to do, it's trying to, collect communities and things from those communities, whether it's tokens or NFTs from their games and applications and experiences, and then distribute them to users. Well, if the ASM protocol can live everywhere, how do those rewards get collected and distributed in a way that's simple to build? Because every new chain that comes up, you want to be able to enable rewards collecting from that, and energy's a really good thing to use, because people are collecting energy through their staking process, and it's relatively trivial for us to enable them to use that energy to claim things across lots of different chains, because it's not an on-chain balance. And so it helps us build and scale out the void to every chain without having to necessarily do chain-to-chain integrations on the protocol side of things.
Thanks for adding clarity to that, Aaron. Now, before I throw it over to Believers and invite anyone else to come up and ask a question, now's a great time to come up. A very popular question has been around the Gen 2 brains. After the announcement for intelligent surreal escapes, people want to know, are they still going to be able to use their brain after they become an intelligent surreal escape? And what is an intelligent surreal escape?
Yeah, so the idea is that you can keep your Gen 2 brains if you want, but for each brain you'll be able to claim a surreal escape in the third kingdom, and these surreal escapes will be special ones that are tuned for a new season or new episode, that will introduce additional rewards in the form of ASTO tokens. And so part of the design of Third Kingdom is to be able to support new rewards over different seasons and episodes, and that could be from within our ecosystem or even outside our ecosystem. And so people who get those surreal escapes in the Third Kingdom will be able to add a layer of gameplay and rewards capture for ASTO, and in collaboration with their friendly all-stars. And so this is a way for both to provide I guess replacement utility for the brains, because we're going to lean much harder into the Gen 1 matrix to make the Murmur matrix work properly, but also a way to unlock what had been kind of talked about in the past as an airdrop relative to A for All Stars. So we put those two things together in the same bucket, and give a new asset with new utility and new rewards for All-Star holders and Gen 2 holders. Now you can continue to use Gen 2 brains in the games and experiences that exist today, and developers can continue to build on those genomes if they want to. But just to make the core protocol work, we had to go down this path of essentially retiring Gen 2 brains from the future roadmap of development.
Okay, got it. All right, I've got a few people up on stage. We'll get through some more questions live, and then I got some more that have come in from other sources I'll get to as well. But Believers, you were first up here, my friend. What's your question?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the AMA. I think it's important to talk about these things, especially with all the new directions. In general, I like the direction everything is going. But I do have one or two questions. One would be more on the understanding side. So coming back to the example of the rock that is intelligent, I would understand it in a way that it has a permanent state of where you can bring it to the toxic land and then it's toxic. But if I in real life, if I bring a rock and paint it, it's not intelligent, but it's painted now. So it's more probably that's the description that it has a permanent state that it can retain over time.
Yeah, or an impermanent state. I think the notion of intelligence is more along the idea that it can accept and retain data. And so depending on your view of the universe, and we probably don't need to get into that, painting a rock is just giving it some more information. And in this context, we're capturing data based on those interactions and then storing it alongside that thing, so that when it interacts with any kind of model, then it can have a consistent kind of experience about itself from that data. So the intelligence is impermanent, I guess, because the model could be in game A could be different from game B, which is one of the really beautiful things about the matrix and making intelligence portable. And also those models could evolve over time. Maybe we get a new kind of technology beyond LLMs or transformers or whatever, and this will still work because the data is still relevant. And that's the cool thing, is the way that intelligence interacts with the data is the secret sauce here. And so that model can, that generative model can impart a new attribute to the card that it carries with it for the rest of its life. And that data can then be used in a different model somewhere else over time. So everyone knows it's a painted rock. And I think that the concept actually goes even further than that, in that we're thinking about like maybe narrow forms of data. But when you bring these generative models into play, and do something like connect it to UBF or to altered state, which is, I don't know, have we announced that? No, we haven't. Is the new brand for our generative 3D. So when you put those things into the mix, the data that's actually being stored could be a UBF blueprint for that object, which is actually the data generated by altered state, the textures and UV maps and all that kind of stuff is stored as a blueprint against that murmur card. So it's not just like a bit of text that goes in a prompt injection, it's actually the data about the paint itself. And this kind of all put together is like part of the concept we have internally called universal pipelines. And I can hear Marco high-fiving me in his sleep if he's not watching, because he's been banging on about this for a year, and it took me about a year to understand how it all comes together. But really, this is kind of the future of how assets are created and generated, as much as it is about how they interact with intelligent agents.
Aaron, just before I throw it back to Believers for a follow-up.
I hope that answered the question.
Can you dig into a little deeper? You just announced a new name for DOC. Can you tell us what that name is and what the product is it's attached to?
Yeah, so what we had been calling the dynamic object creator, which I thought was cool, but people who are smarter than me on branding have been working on improving, is now called Altered State. And I think it's a very clever brand, and it's actually been built into the new brand concept for ASM. And you can see now where we've kind of split ASM as the protocol, and then Altered State is this application. And so now we have synergy between those two things. When people think about and creating intelligent objects, when they actually do that thing, like type in, I don't know, toxic rock, that will produce a 3D asset, but it'll also produce a new genome matrix tied to that rock, giving it its personality and physical attributes. And also it will produce its first murmur card based on the data that we glean from that generation. And so they're all part of the same world building tools now. And so on one side of the coin, you've got ASM protocol that stores and transmutes and transmits the data about things. And then you've got Altered State that creates the things.
Amazing.
And
Believers, we
have some really cool shit happening. And I think people in this community have seen me posting bits here and there about some of the stuff the team has been building, but we just absolutely have the very best team in the world on Altered State. Our lead scientist, I was looking through the other day, it's a hilarious situation. We have an innovation channel internally where people post interesting things, papers they see from other researchers and projects and big tech companies and stuff like that. And someone posts this paper saying, hey, look at this cool new thing. And then about 10 minutes, I think it was Jesse actually, 10 minutes later, he's like, oh, Dr. Wang is the author. And then you go, well, that's like the 5th time this has happened. I think he's got like 2 dozen paper authorships to his name in this space specifically. We've nabbed some of the best researchers in the world out of Tencent and ByteDance, and so we really do have the state-of-the-art team and research on this stuff. I'm really excited about it.
Amazing. Believins, was there anything else from you, my friend?
Yeah, actually there is, and I think also thanks for the extensive explanation. I think it's definitely going to be a task to re-listen to the space and try to understand all the things that I said.
There was an awesome little thread that Kona put out like yesterday.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
If you haven't read it, and maybe we can pin it in the space or whatever. He went through and like outlined some use case scenarios, which I think are all like very possible things to do. And the answer to that question in terms of what can the Murmur Matrix do, it's like literally anything.
Yeah.
Anything where intelligence interacts with content, interacts with data, it can do that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like also like when I read it, ideas already came to mind. One thing more on the dev side of things, where if you're looking at the past of the brains, and it was all like as an AI agents spin up, but in the end, the metadata itself was just a 20 by 20 matrix, and then you would need to plug in your own AI, and also like the Paddy thing that was live on GitHub. I think it was never like totally accessible besides having that matrix where you could plug in any AI, of course, like that you build on your own. But talking about the future, how, like, when can we play around with things, and maybe even if it's not in the Rediverse or in like virtual worlds, but more like how can developers and teams who are maybe not already like working behind the scenes with you already try out this technology, try out the idea, and like how will this work in the next
I think you hit
months?
the nail on the head there on 2 points. One is the previous model of ASM, although brilliant in all of the core ideas we kept, was heavily reliant on developers establishing training infrastructure, or users spinning up machine learning training infrastructure to interact with the genomes. And now we're in a world where there are like literally hundreds of these generative models available to developers to leverage already, either directly as something to implement themselves or via APIs. So the pervasiveness of intelligence and access for intelligence for developers is much broader, and so the ability for them to leverage this new approach, the more modified approach for the protocol, is much simpler and can scale much wider. So that's like the first thing we tried to fix as part of this. In terms of how you can play with it, so there's like 2 phases, I guess. One is like establishing, maybe 3 phases, establishing the protocols, and that's like near-term thing. So get the non-fungible intelligence protocol palette running on root network. That's something that will happen shortly after Substrate 1 upgrade. People will then be able to start creating those embedded brains, genomes, with their associated Murmur Matrix cards. And as soon as they've done that, if they have a model available, one of the open source models or whatever, they can then start to like interact with that data and build cool experiences on it. We're working already with developers like Shen to show how that comes together, so that people can get a good feel for the development end to end. The second stage will be like populating these new kinds of content. So this is where you can upgrade your existing collectible to have a card and a brain, or use altered state to generate new content that has this stuff built into it. So like build the content layer out. And then the third stage is like building out the developer ecosystem on top of that. And there's a couple of tools that we can build out between now and then that will make that process simpler for developers. And then the last bit is like direct experiences. So, as part of the build out of Readyverse, there's going to be a very cool user generated, experience inside of there that will be able to leverage a lot of these mechanics that end users can go in and play with and experiment with, and then we can kind of teach developers through that process too.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. I think maybe one last question, and then I leave it to the others. I'm sorry for keeping you waiting. I think that it's essential here to ask a question. So developers are expected to bring their own models, or is it like something where ASM or like Futureverse has like a, let's say, native model where it always, like, devs can also use the native model, or are devs expected to have I know it's much more accessible than some time ago and much cheaper, but I think like from a
we'll have our own
developer
experiences and like I said, native applications where people can play with this stuff. But I really don't think that's going to be a determining factor in how this gets adopted anymore. It's so much more pervasive now. Like the things we used to have to do to onboard a developer and teach them about and get the infrastructure in place and stuff like that, and find specialist talent within their organization that understood machine learning stuff. All of that's gone.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great questions, Believers. Asking the questions for the developers because they're the ones crying out for these tools in their hands. We get to see what Aaron shares on X, and we're all very envious and want to play with it ourselves. But Miss Gecko's joined me on stage. The roles are reversed. I'm the host, and you're joining me as a speaker today, mate. What have you got for us?
How's it going, Mo Meta, Captain, everyone? So, Captain, for me, the biggest thing is going to be creating my own environment. And I've been thinking more and more about that. And when I prompt and I get ready and I go into my environment, sort of not quite the same wavelength as Believins, but, is the ground going to be baked? If there's trees in there, are they going to be, the old terminology?
Yeah.
How much, I guess, the reason it triggered me was because the AFA stadiums that were released. And I was like, okay, is there going to be some sort of a base model that, the world or the environment is going to be created from? But for me, that's I can't wait for that piece. And I also thought Doc was a great name because I said, "What's up, Doc?" Like the bunny, right?
Yeah, it's just the truth of it was, and the very clever branding ideas from Shara. She's like a queen of this stuff. Is two things. One, establishing a new brand is hard. We already have Altered State out there, so why not leverage it and tie the value of what's been created through to the protocol and to Asto. And two is the new brand of ASM and Altered State is rooted in this idea of state changes in physics. So if you look, maybe we can share this actually, and people can kind of see the thinking behind it, but rooted in this idea that the cosmos is full of elements that can change phases and shapes, states, and that's really what Altered State is doing. It's taking something, say a text prompt, and turning it into a 3D object, and so we're actually changing the state of that thing, and so that's kind of where the new brand comes from. The look and feel is tied back to particles that are changing states in a quantum system. It's quite cool. The question in terms of the environment. So, like I said, one of the first experiences in the Readyverse, and something we're going to demonstrate with some of the other big gaming players at an upcoming conference later this year, and hopefully get a chance for the first kind of players to have a go at that, will allow you to be like in white room in the matrix, essentially, where you can prompt all the elements of that space into existence, whether it's the ground and terrain, whether it's environmental features, whether it's fixtures inside of those environmental features, whether it's characters, whether it's the weather, whether it's the background music. All of those things will be promptable, and each time you generate those things, every one of them will have a brain, and every one of them will have a matrix card, and then you can start to see like interesting things happen out of those interactions. And they can be as simple as, when I approach this object, I hear this sound. Like objects have sounds, and so Jen works with altered state, and they create that interaction, and that data exists in the card, and so the experience can render that sound, or it could be more complex. When this item interacts with this other item, it opens a quest. There's like all sorts of like permeations that can come off of those off of that data and those interactions.
Hey guys, I've just received an update that we do have a hard stop in about 7 minutes, so I want to make sure I get through these questions. Great questions, Miss Gecko. Atari, while I've got you up here, brother, let's get the gloves off. I want to hear your question. You'll be speaking on behalf of the community. What do you need to know, my friend?
Okay, first of all, I'm all about mitigating Aaron's health risk, so you need to go drink some tea and relax and de-stress a little bit. I speak on behalf of the community. We need you.
It's pollen, actually, that's screwing me over. I'm sensitive to it, and there's a bit floating around at the moment as we approach spring over here.
Okay, thank God. Okay, good. So, gosh, I have so many questions, but let me just mitigate it into one, I guess. Are you able to speak on what kind of the plans are for what the nanobots? I was just, me, I came from Atom. That's a really big passion of mine. I know they were going to be creating parts, and I know we pivoted to the whole UGC thing. And yeah, like, I'm assuming the cars are going to be intelligent, and it sounds like there's some sort of battle royale connected to open with them. Can you speak on the nanobots, as well as what the plans are for the Gen 2 brains and the Asto energy that was supposed to come with Atom?
Yeah, I actually don't have the answer right now specifically on nanobots. But yes, the idea for sure is that each of these objects, including the cars, in fact, we have a little proof of concept internally where we embed some matrix stuff into one of the Walker World cars from Atom Car Club, and has some kind of interesting in-game interactions because of that. So that's going to be a feature, be able to embed this stuff inside of those assets. The plan, I think everyone's kind of seen in terms of how we go forward with the car, bigger car racing concept is definitely part of Open's roadmap. So that's really our focus for creating that kind of next, the higher quality, what would have been possibly, I think, called Burn Down back in the day. That's where the focus for that will be, as one of the biomes in Open.
Okay, great. And yeah, I'll let other people bring their questions. I'm obsessed with the sad rock. I was put in the comments. It's literally become like a pillar in my conversations. I made it a sticker. So yeah, I'm putting that thing. I'm not putting it in Rainbowtopia, that's for sure.
But Atari, do you have a tattoo of this rock?
Not yet, but they'll pivot if I do. So I better chill. I'm just kidding. I love you guys. Thanks.
Touche.
Hey,
Thanks,
like I said, I think on a space I jumped on earlier, don't assume anything in terms of what we haven't pivoted until it actually happens, because there's been some wrong assumptions out there, and maybe today you'll get a glimpse of like what we've been doing with some of the old lore and stuff, and it might restore some confidence there. So stay tuned for some more like releases from the Fluff World account.
If we're running out of time,
I've actually got a little bit more
guys.
time given to me.
Ooh.
So I can probably stay on another 15. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's just take things down a step.
Let's say at least 10.
let's get into these questions then. Let's get some of these fired away to keep the community happy. Oh, I like this one. Are there any potential partners who we see currently building in the space that we're looking to align with, Aaron? What have you got for me?
And we will speak shortly on that. But
all right,
the great thing is, like I said, some of the best builders in this space we've been having awesome conversations with, and there's this real willingness to work together to share, what they're building in their community, what we've been building in our community, the value of the IP we've created, the value of bringing communities together and exploring different applications of these ideas across the open metaverse. Like we're early days in that process, but some really I think some of the most significant builders in the space we've been having those conversations. We'll be announcing what we're doing together.
Amazing. Now, we recently had the AFRA Arenas drop. Got a few questions here regarding, are we going to be expecting to see these in a game in the near future?
Yeah, that's why we dropped them. There's no intention to drop them and then not build a game experience around them.
Very cool. Now, regarding the approved patents for ASM technology, how do you see builders and developers using and leveraging these patents and what they're doing going forward?
I think I've covered that a lot today. And the core answer to that question is the patent's about ideas and systems for implementing those ideas. It's not about technology. They're abstract from technology. And so this new Void protocol approach enables us to allow developers to build things the way they think is going to best work for their application, but also ensure that there's mutual value exchanged for the ASM community through that Void protocol. So that's kind of the core of how we're approaching this now, is give developers more freedom to build and freedom to operate using this Void protocol.
That's great. Now, this next question is the mother of all when questions. Does the team have plans to release an extensive roadmap in the next 6 months in terms of technical development, marketing, and partnerships? And will there be more technical AMAs?
So on the first question, people, if you're new to this community, this will be the first time you've heard it. If you're not, it'll be the 1,000th time you've heard it. We don't put 6-month, 12-month roadmaps out for stuff that we never have. Things change. We come up with new ideas. The market evolves. Technology evolves. And so committing out that far in the future, if we'd done that 6 months ago, we'd probably be in a position of backtracking on a bunch of stuff because things are moving so fast in this space. So we'll keep people informed, and we have released 2 papers already this year that are showing people the direction we're going in. And as these core things mature, we'll release further levels of detail. Next level of detail will be more specific about how these protocols work with developer documentation and the launch of the protocols themselves, with the partners that are coming on to the Void protocol to begin with. There'll be more detail about how that works. And so as soon as we have the information in a form that is ready to ship and launch, it'll be out there in the community. In terms of the second part of the question, I think a big part of bringing Lenny up here and also having taken her from working in the background on bringing stability and growth back to ASM is now she's the face of the community. I'm sure she'll be wanting to spend more time doing having regular conversations with the community about how things are progressing and getting their feedback on things. Sorry, Lenny, I've dropped you in it. You're going to do more. You're going to do more AMAs.
Bet.
That's awesome. We love that. We love you, Lenny. This is going to be a good thing for us. Very happy to hear it. Now, this next question leans back into what Atari was kind of talking about before. I'm not sure if you can answer it. ATOM membership cards. We're going to get a Gen 2 claim from the club staked Asto Energy. Could this now be a Surreal Escape drop?
Yes.
Can you answer that, Aaron?
Yes.
Just a yes? Perfect. Now, the next question, are brains only trainable in games? Could they be trained in other methods like a chatbot? How do we train the brains with our own data? Would training require coding or technical
I think we've
skills?
addressed this actually, like the paradigm change from requiring training for brains to work to making brains about the data that interacts with models is the big change in this protocol. And so, not to say that you can't do those things. Paddy still exists if people want to go and build on those ideas, and there are valid use cases for that. Like I said, we've implemented these in our games already, and for certain things that will still make sense. But I think the more interesting and exciting opportunities will interact with those, with those other generative and large language models.
All right, we're going to take the conversation where a lot of people want to see it go, and that's to TTK.
So and the simple answer, like not as simple, but an extension to that answer is, with the way the Murmur matrix works, is training your brain is as simple as using your character. Because it's the data it's going to get from the matrix is going to, quote unquote, train it. It's going to give it a contextual memories. That means the next time it interacts with a model, the data about that thing is fed into that, and the output is relative to that data.
Like it. All right, with this third kingdom question, will Genesis brains have the ability to automate certain gameplay functionality or provide boosts in certain features like prestige upgrading?
I don't think we're going to answer that level of detail here.
And we'll keep moving along. Gen 1 genomes.
But I will say that we do have some really cool stuff coming, more cool stuff coming for Gen 1 brains. And once we've got all the detail packaged around that, we'll share that with the community. But there's an additional important role for Gen 1 brains in the way that the infrastructure of ASM is going to be built out.
I feel like you're covering a lot of this stuff, but I'll keep reading. Non-fungible intelligent palette process. In what way do Gen 1 brain holders benefit from this?
Yeah, well, so we've already outlined the Gen 1 brain holders have the existing utility that continues, and they continue to benefit from the Void protocol, the way that the Void protocol works with new utility. And then there will be additional further utility that we haven't announced yet. But they're not directly linked to the NFI palette.
I've just got a request I'm bringing up, but it looks like they're having trouble connecting. At this point, though, I want to throw it over to you first, Lenny. As we're getting to the end of the show, I want to hear what you're most excited about. We know you're a gamer. We know you're integrally connected to all of this stuff. What are you really excited about what we're building and where we're going?
What am I not excited about? Can I say Murmur Matrix 10 times really fast? I'm kidding. No, we can. I mean, we're in the middle of a global AI revolution, and to me, there's just ultimate importance in the individual and community ownership aspect of AI. So I'm just really amped to get the NFI protocol out there soon to make this tech accessible, so we can continue to work with and keep learning from builders and users, so we can start creating these truly alive and emergent experiences, and just really champion the empowerment in the space.
Yeah, we truly are all building this together. Aaron, look, I see the announcement pinned to the top for the XRPL Ripple X space in there. What have we got coming up, mate? What do we have in the roadmap for us? Announcements, events, what's going on?
On that space or in general?
Well, let's just start with that space. Everyone, we've got a space pinned to the top. Aaron and Shen will be joining Dan
if I
from
announce
Ripple
the
to talk about
announcements here,
exciting
then
things.
no one will show up. So show up to the thing. And then we're going
Show
to have
up,
a great.
set your
I think we're
reminders
going to
and
have
show
a
up
great
to the
conversation. And there's a whole bunch of things that are being built out in the ecosystem that I think will be really good for the broader XRPR community to learn about and to understand about how we're bringing more users, more utility, more value back into that ecosystem through what we're building in the root network.
And we're pretty sure that whole XRPL community will be pumped today with all the positive news that's going out. Yeah, I am. 100%. All right, so we're going to wrap this up, guys. This has been an ASM Ask Us Anything, where we try to get through as many of your questions as possible. If we didn't, please let us know on our normal Discord and X channels. A special thanks to Aaron for joining us, and Lenny, Head of Intelligence, coolest name ever. Now, if you didn't get your question answered, you know where to put it. If you're a developer, if you're a builder, if you want more information about this, or you're going to reach out to us, the website, alternatestatemachine.xyz. Thanks again, everyone who joined us on stage and asking your questions. We look forward to doing this for you again real soon. And until next time, thanks, everybody. We're out.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.